Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. If you are new to my channel, this is Rouse Rising and my name is Katie. Today I wanted to share with you guys the birth of our first child. His name is Jag Riker.
Smoke.
Start from the beginning, give you all the details that I can remember from his pregnancy and his birth. Before we even conceived, we had explored the idea of having a home birth. And the first thing that my husband said to me when I said, "Hey, what do you think about having our first baby at home? Like giving birth at home?" My husband replied, "Let me guess, you also want to eat your placenta." And I was like, actually, about that. There is something called placenta encapsulation that I have been researching, but we still have to get pregnant, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So for 6 months, we tried to conceive our first child, and while we had a good time during those 6 months, it was also really frustrating. I had gotten off birth control, and it just took that long for my body to get back to normal. And I learned from that experience that birth control was really damaging for me. And so from then on, we decided to use natural family planning. And I'll talk all about that in another video. We were very excited when we finally did conceive. I found out I was pregnant in August of 2011. And immediately I just started to mentally prepare and physically prepare myself for his birth and his existence into this physical world. One of the first things I did was I called a bunch of midwives. I scoured the area for the right midwife that would fit our family, and the very first midwife that we interviewed with, I was sold. I loved her from the get-go, and she encouraged me, as any good midwife would do, she encouraged me to interview other midwives in the area to be sure that she was the right fit for me or that I found the perfect fit midwife. But I already knew it in my heart. My husband knew it. We left the meeting that day and we hired her. Her name is Sean, and she is based out of the UK in around the Suffolk, Norfolk area. She's actually from Norfolk and we were from Suffolk. So she had a bit of a journey to meet with us for my prenatals and for the birth. It was, about an hour drive or so for her. So we hired Sean, and I started and continued to have prenatal care on the military base where my husband was stationed. Like I said before, we were living in Suffolk, England during this time. So I continued my care on base with the OBGYNs there up until about 20 weeks. And once I got my anatomy scan and all of that, I decided to discontinue care with them. And then I resumed care with our midwife, Sean. Sean is actually a breech birth specialist. She teaches all over the world and teaches other midwives and OBGYNs about the physiological aspects of breech birth and how to deliver breech babies safely. So she is a huge wealth of knowledge, and I learned so much from her throughout that pregnancy, as my son was breech most of the pregnancy. So, and that is a trend that happened in all my pregnancies. I always had breech transverse babies up until about a week or two before I went into labor. So I was really happy that we had chosen Sean, because she was just a rock as I went through all of the emotions of, oh my goodness, am I going to have a breech baby? Does this mean cesarean? Can I have a breech baby naturally? So As my pregnancy progressed, we stayed very healthy. I was doing CrossFit. I was eating a Weston A. Price diet. Basically just whole foods, lots of bone broth, lots of meat products. And I was taking a Whole Foods prenatal. And I was just doing everything I could. And my husband was very supportive throughout that pregnancy, that I was trying to be as healthy as I could be. No matter what I did though, my baby was still breech. And around 38 weeks, we decided to get a scan to see where baby was. And thankfully by that point, he had turned head down by 38 weeks. So pretty late in the pregnancy when he turned head down. I will add that leading up to him going head down, Sean was doing acupressure on my feet, and she was also doing moxibustion, and that's where you stick a stick between a certain pressure points between your pinky toe and your other toe, and you burn a stick gently, and as the stick gets closer to that point, it just triggers an area that helps encourage a baby to turn. During this pregnancy, we were also doing spinning babies exercises every single day, and Sean helped to instruct and teach us how to do the spinning babies, stretches, and exercises. We continued to do those leading up to the baby finally flipping head down at 38 weeks. I went on to be pregnant a further 4 weeks, and if I remember correctly, it was 38 weeks that he had finally turned. It could have been a little bit later. Most of my babies turn about 1 to 2 weeks before I actually go into labor and stay. With the exception of my last baby, I was 42 weeks in a couple days, and she was still transverse. That took some maneuvering, but we got her head down. Anyways, back to my birth story with Riker, our first. 40 weeks came, and I was walking daily. We were doing all the things that we could to encourage labor. We continued to do those things for the remaining 2 weeks. Now, during this time, I was also drinking third trimester tea. I was taking evening primrose oil. I was taking a labor prep tincture. And I was having twice weekly visits with my midwife to check up on me and to check up on our son and to make sure everything was okay. Sean was providing me in-home visits at this time. So she would drive down from Norfolk every couple of days, about twice a week, to visit with us, to do the acupressure points on my feet to help encourage labor. She also gave me an essential oil blend that I used to help encourage labor to happen. And I believe during this time, I also had a stretch and sweep, which, let me tell you, was not comfortable. And she may have given me two. Now, this was 8 years ago, so I'm trying to remember correctly. She may have did a stretch and sweep 2 different times, neither of which resulted in labor within the surrounding days. So finally, at 42 weeks, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I started to have labor pains. So I'm going to share with you guys throughout this video a few pictures that I had taken while I was in labor in the birth. Unfortunately, I cannot find my birth pictures. We have moved, I think, 6 times in the last, well, way more than that. But since Riker was born, we've moved about 6 times, and to different houses, you know, hotels, just all kinds of things. It's a crazy story, a crazy journey. It's part of military life. But within those 6 moves, I have lost his birth photos, which I'm pretty upset about. I have not gone to look through all of our digital media or anything to find them yet. I will try to, but I do have them in a photo album, so I will show you those pictures. So let me get back to the story. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up with my first sure contraction, and I was excited, and Aaron was excited, and we're like, oh yeah, we're having a baby today. We were naive. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, we hop out of bed, we go downstairs, I labor on the ball, I get all the tea and snacks ready for the midwife. And for us, and we just think, great, we're in labor. I notified the midwife that I was having contractions. She came in the morning around 5 or 6 in the morning, I believe, she showed up to the house, and I continued to have contractions. She helped me get into a couple of positions to try to encourage baby into a better position. And around 11 o'clock, she decided that, hey, you're still in early labor. Your contractions are really consistent, but you still have quite a ways to go. So why don't you guys take a walk, go get some lunch? She said, I'm going to go back up to Norfolk for a few hours, and she had to do something with her family. And then she was going to come back down and check on us later that evening, or sooner if we called her back. So my husband and I decided to take a walk, and it was about a mile, down to the sandwich shop. And for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the sandwich shop. Best sandwiches ever, though, down there in Bury St. Edmunds, where we were living. And I was contracting the whole walk there. And when we got there, I had a contraction while we were waiting in line. And the ladies that were making the sandwiches were like, oh dear, do we need to boil some water? And I said, no, it's okay. I have a ways to go, I think. I'm fine. I'm fine. And so, while we were there waiting for our sandwiches, I had another contraction, and they were like, are you sure you don't need us to boil water? And I said, I think I'm going to make it home. So they were super helpful and very excited for us that we were in labor, and they could tell that, labor birth was imminent and it would be happening. So we left the sandwich shop, we walked back home, we eat our sandwiches. The whole time I'm having contractions, and I think, like, gosh, this baby has to be coming soon, right? And we're only 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And so at this point, I had been in labor for 9 hours, 8 or 9 hours. Surely I'm going to be having a baby soon, right? Keep on laboring, keep on going through the day. The midwife comes back later on that evening, and she decides that I'm progressing fairly slowly. And at this point, I'm getting exhausted. I'm done. I don't want to be in labor anymore. It has picked up to active labor, but baby just wasn't positioned very well. And this whole time, I think she knew how baby was positioned, but she didn't want to instill any kind of fear in me. So she didn't say anything that would be scary or, cause me any kind of distress. So she takes me up to the bedroom up on the 3rd floor. I had to climb 3 flights of stairs because we lived in what Americans call a townhome. But in England, they're called terraced housing. So she took me up to the 3rd story where our bedroom was. And at this point, she brought in the gas and air, which is like nitrous oxide. It's just a gas to help a mother cope with labor. And in England, they use it in the hospitals, and they use it for home births. And also in England, the primary care for pregnancy and birth is midwives. So I go up and I lay on the bed, and I hang my lower body off of the bed through contractions. And then my upper body is still on the bed. And I'm just hanging there, and I'll write it below because it's escaping my brain what that is called. But it was to help open up my pelvis so that the baby could get into my pelvis, because he was just kind of hung up. He wasn't putting adequate pressure on my cervix. He was just hung up on my pelvis. And so we needed to open the brim of my pelvis so that his head could fit in there comfortably. So we do this for quite a few contractions on the bed with the gas and air. It was excruciating. It was horrible. And I don't know how I made it through that. Well, we keep on laboring, and I finally get to a point when I'm just like begging, can I get into the birth pool? And at this time, my husband had filled up the birth pool, and it was ready for me to get in. I don't know how ready my body was for me to get in, but I needed some kind of relief. So I get into the birth pool, and I continue using gas and air. And this is, at this point, middle of the night, past midnight. I had been laboring for about 18 hours or so, 19 hours or so. And so I'm in the pool, and my husband is right there with me. I will not let him leave my sight. The poor guy had to go to the bathroom, and immediately I would have a contraction, and I would just need him right back there with me. My midwife was great the whole time. She was knitting a baby hat for me while I labored. She was there watching and checking, and everything was fine. The whole time she encouraged me, Katie, your baby wants to be born. You're doing great. Everything is fine. You're safe. she was just so reassuring when I thought I just couldn't carry on any longer. Apparently, I had sucked the gas and air tank completely dry and really wanted and needed it. It was running low, and my midwife decided to call another midwife. Her name was Nikki. She called Nikki. Nikki, do you have any more gas and air? I need you to bring this gas and air because my client is running low on gas and air. She did not tell me that I was running low on gas and air. What she did do, and she's such a great midwife for many reasons, and this is one of them, was she suggested, Katie, why don't you try a few contractions without the gas and air? And I said, okay. And I took the gas and air off. And this was her effort to save what little bit was left in the tank for me in case she couldn't get more tanks delivered to my birth. I took the gas and air away and I started contracting without it, which ended up being a godsend because it took so much work and focus to breathe in this special mask, the gas and air, and to like push the air back out of the mask because it has like a certain exhaust system. And it was challenging. It was a really challenging thing to do. It took a lot of my energy. It took a lot of my focus, and it just, at that point, it just wasn't benefiting me as far as pain relief. I wasn't experiencing pain relief from the gas and air anymore. So her suggesting that I take the gas and air off was super helpful. I took the gas and air off. I think a few hours later, the other midwife showed up with another tank, which I ended up not using. And my midwife was exhausted, and she decided to go upstairs and to lay down for a little while. Well, about the time that she left, Nikki, the other midwife, was down there sitting with us, just quietly in the corner, just not really there, but there. And I started feeling pushy. And this was about 4 hours before I actually gave birth. I was kind of bearing down. My bowels were eliminating. I was just really pushy and grunty. And this went on for a very long time. And I think Nikki could see that the baby wasn't actually coming at this point, and she probably knew also because her and Sean communicated that my baby was malpositioned. So I'm just pushing, and eventually a couple hours later, after Sean got some rest, she came downstairs and I was still pushing. Sean looked at my husband and she's like, Katie cannot give birth in this water. To keep me from being afraid of what was really going on. She just said, Katie can't birth in this water. We need to get her out. And the purpose of getting me out of the pool, it was excruciating. It was really hard to get out of the pool and into a different position to push my baby out. But she needed me to get out of the water so that I could lay down on the sofa on my back and put my feet all the way up to the ceiling. This changed the angle of my pelvis to help the baby come out because he was literally kind of stuck in there, stuck under my pelvis. It turns out he was posterior and a little bit wonky in there. So I laid on my back on the sofa with my feet up to the sky, and for about an hour, I pushed, and his head would come out a little bit. He was turtling. He would come out a little bit, and then he would go back in. And I was getting so frustrated because I could feel him stretching me. I could feel him coming out a little bit. He wouldn't fully crown, and then he would go back in. At this point, I'm like, just take me to the hospital, cut me open, take this baby, I'm done. And they assured me, no, he's coming. He's almost here. He's almost here. And almost here for me was like seconds. Like, okay, he's going to be here in a few seconds. I didn't realize it was like over an hour of this happening, and I was really hoping it would just be over. So every time I had a contraction, my husband was actually sitting between my legs. I had one leg up on the sofa and the other leg was up on his shoulder. So he had full frontal view of everything that was going on. So he's watching the baby's head come out and go back in, come back in. And he's like, it kind of looks like a turtle, because his little scalp, when babies come out, their scalp and everything is like pressed together and it's all wrinkled up and looks really bizarre and crazy. Meanwhile, Nikki, the other midwife, has my camera, and she took the most amazing birth photos. I mean, just everything. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to know what it looked like, what was happening to me. And she got some really great photos. If only I could find those photos. So Aaron sees Riker's head coming out, and Riker's face wasn't even completely out. And he opens his eyes up and he looks up at his daddy, and Aaron is just like losing it at this point. His baby boy is looking at him face up. And with a couple more pushes, a couple more contractions, he came all the way out. I think it took a couple contractions from crowning to his head to be completely born. And then it took, I think, 2 more contractions for his body to come out. It was a very slow process. The benefit of the slow process of pushing my baby out was that I didn't tear extensively. I had a teeny tiny tear that my midwife said it could take 1 or 2 stitches, or I could just rest and keep my legs closed and it would heal up fairly easily. So I chose to not have stitches. Aaron caught, as Riker was coming out, the midwife noticed that the cord was wrapped around his neck. And so she helped Aaron when Riker was coming out. She did like this flippy-do maneuver to get the cord out from around his neck as he was being born. So the cord didn't get tight. There was no distress during labor. She was monitoring the baby's heart rate the whole time. And so she helped Aaron do like the flippy-do maneuver into Aaron's arms. And then Aaron puts Riker up on my chest. And the first words out of my mouth, I think with all my births, is, "Thank God it's over." And thank God it was over. You guys, I was in labor for 27 hours. We did not sleep. Riker was born at 6 o'clock, like 6:30 that morning. So I went into labor at 3 a.m. and I did not have him past 6 a.m. Went a whole nother day, a whole nother night, and he was born at 6 a.m. in the morning. He was actually due April 27th, and we went 2 weeks overdue. So I ended up with a Taurus bull baby, and he was perfect. He weighed 7 pounds, 13 ounces. The midwife did all the weighing, all the measuring, everything right there in my living room where the birth pool was. We had a table set up. And this is another thing that happened, was it took about 45 minutes to an hour for my placenta to come out. And I think it was just because I was sitting on the floor and I was holding my baby. His cord hadn't been cut yet. And we just sat there and wait. And I was terrified to push that placenta out. I felt pressure inside. And my midwife was like, "Well, I think your placenta is ready to come." And I was just like, I didn't want to push it out. So I got into like a little squat position and gave like a push cough, and the placenta came right out. And I was like, thank God, now it's for real over. Yeah, hardest thing I have ever done in my life was 27 hours of labor with a posterior baby born sunny side up. For my first baby, it was the biggest challenge of my life, and it was one that prepared me for all of my other labor and deliveries. I think going to 42 weeks without many interventions, I didn't have an induction. I did have a stretch and sweep, which did not work in my case. But I think just having that experience, and that one being the hardest one, just set me up for my next 3 births that were relatively easy compared to that one. Birth is always challenging and really difficult, but that one, I will have to say, tested me to the limits and tested my husband and proved to us that we were capable of anything. One thing I didn't tell you guys about was just like the negative input that we got from everybody that we told that we were going to plan to home birth. A lot of people didn't believe that we could do it. They thought I was crazy and being reckless and unsafe. But I don't think that people understood. My midwife worked in the NHS in England. She was a very experienced midwife. She worked in the hospitals delivering babies, and she was also an independent midwife and able to attend home births as an independent midwife separate from the NHS. She also taught, she was a teaching midwife. She taught so many people and so many other midwives about breech birth and about physiological aspects of breech birth, and she was just a wealth of information. She was such a valuable asset to the NHS in England and in other countries. So for me, I felt like I had the best, most experienced person for us, given the situation that we were in and the difficulty it was to give birth. And also I want to say that despite going to 42 weeks, I did not have a big baby. He was 7 pounds, 13 ounces. He wasn't massive. And you guys can check out our second baby's birth. She was born in the hospital, high risk hospital birth, and I will link it up here as well as down below. And she was 7 pounds, 14 ounces, just 1 ounce bigger than her brother. She was also a 42-week baby. Then we went on to have a baby at 40 weeks after 72 hours pre-ruptured membranes. That means my water was broken for over 72 hours, and I had a very fast 1 hour and 20-minute labor with our third baby. He was born at home in the water. And then the fourth baby, you can check out her birth video also. She was born at home, and she was born at 43 weeks. She was the biggest baby, born over 9 pounds. And gosh, I tell you guys, once you get to the fourth kid, you just don't remember all the details of their height and weight and head circumference and all that. But she was like 9 pounds, 3 or 4 ounces. I can't remember exactly. I'd have to go back and check. But she was our biggest baby, born at 43 weeks. And the fact that she gained almost 1.5 pounds more than her brother and sister at 42 weeks, like, I don't know how she did that, but she was a chubba wubba little baby. So check out her birth video too. Thank you so much for joining me for our first child's birth, our very first home birth. And if you are considering a home birth, just know that you are powerful, you are amazing, and you can do it. Just do your research, choose the right care provider, midwife for you, and be sure that you're doing everything you can in your pregnancy to prepare for your labor and birth. Do your daily yoga. If not, a couple times a week, do your yoga, and just get your body symmetrical, loosened up, and ready to give birth to your baby. There's also, I'll link it down below, Spinning Baby's website, which helps make your pelvic floor symmetrical and allows, create space for your baby to get in the most optimal position for birth. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to click subscribe. It is Rouse Rising emblem down here in the corner so that you can stay up to date with everything that our family does. I have tons of recipes, tons of pregnancy tea recipes, as well as preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum videos for you guys to watch and to learn from. And I hope you enjoy my channel. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.